And when I see a clock going, I will just do a brief introduction. And
Clock
there
is
we go.
going.
Oh, look,
Murphy, the
there's the clock.
clock is going.
Just as the clock is going, I cough. Excuse me. Folks, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our weekly show. This is your weekly Mauls, Balls and All podcast, where we talk about, it's really an armchair analysis of the games that went on, and it's for fans by the fans. With me is Claire Devney, excuse me, frog in my throat, and returning one of the greats, the gents of rugby punditry, rugby playing, Brent Pope, and also Victor Costello is returning to us as well. And joining us for the first time on our show is a gentleman who I remember being in Lansdowne Road and seeing this gentleman score a try in the corner, and I was absolutely taken away. Hugo McNeil, a gentleman who played for Ireland, played for Leinster, played for the Barbarians, played for the Lions, nearly 40 caps for Ireland. He went on to have a very successful business career with Goldman Sachs. He consulted for Goal, the charity, and he's also a very successful rugby pundit. My God, Hugo McNeil, how the hell are you? And it's a pleasure, and he's just disappeared as I've done that magnificent introduction. Hugo, are you still there? God almighty. Jesus. Brent, you couldn't make it up, could you?
It's showbiz. That's showbiz.
It's showbiz, baby. Right. Anyway, here we go. Hold on a second now. No, he's not. Right. Now, folks, I'll tell you what. Before we go into what I sent you the agenda for what we're going to talk about, I have two questions that were asked of me. And one of them, or here's Hugo. Hold on. 1 sec now. Here he is. Come on back in,
hold
Hugo.
On. Can I just need to interrupt you.
Come on back. All is
sorry,
forgiven, Hugo.
I need to interrupt.
I'm
Peter,
sorry,
check where you're streaming to.
What?
No, you're not. Peter is. Peter, check where you're streaming to. You're not on Facebook. You're not live.
Am I not?
No, you're not on Facebook anyway. I don't know where you're streaming to, but it's not Facebook.
Jesus, this is starting to be a car crash.
Yeah, that might be starting. We're all.
Hold on, will you?
See, you don't have this trouble with like normal people. Victor, yeah. Hugo's gone again. Oh God, this is just.
I think you can probably give up on Hugo because I think that every time.
No, it should be on. It should be on Facebook now.
Okay, let me check. I shall check. I also go into the background and check.
Yeah. No, I think we might let Hugo. Hold on, Doug. Okay, one last time. Here we go. Let's see where this goes. Hugo, yes. How are you?
Now you're live. Sorry, but now you're live.
Okay, so we're live on Facebook now. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Fair enough. My mistake. Hugo, are you okay there?
Sorry, I'm just having lots of problems. I'm just going to have to dial out and try you again. I'm not hearing you clearly. Sorry, and I'm sorry I messed up. I'm going to mess up the whole session.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I mean, if you need to do that,
I don't know why. It's not coming.
All right. Okay.
Victor's gone there.
I know. I'm back.
No, he's back. Victor was just getting his drink.
Exactly.
Hugo, I'll tell you what. I'll take you, Hugo. I'll take you out, and we'll just carry on with Yeah, there we go. We move from the stage.
Who needs Danny Brosnan when you have Victor, or when you have Hugo McNeil?
Anyway,
early next morning. Right. Okay. Right.
Okay.
Enough.
Good.
Let's go. Right now. Brent Pope or Victor Costello, whoever wants to answer this first. Brent Pope, I suspect you will. One of our colleagues, Peter Martin, asked the question about the set piece in Irish. In the run up, it wasn't really working and didn't improve. So his question was, is Paul Connell up for the job? Brent.
Well, absolutely, I would say. I think that you can't. Well, you can't always blame the coach straight up. And I think that he put in so much phenomenal work over the Six Nations, and it wasn't a problem then. For some reason, I don't know. Victor might be able to shed a light on it. For some reason, in the World Cup, their line out didn't function. Now their scrum was fine, albeit I know Andrew Porter was maybe, over penalised in that game against the All Blacks, and that's another way of looking at it. But it did come back the stats that he was the most penalised prop in the European game. So whether or not Barnes had a preconceived idea that he was doing something wrong, I don't know. I'm not privy to the dark arts. But as far as Paul O'Connell being up for it, absolutely. I just think that other players need to take more responsibility on who was calling the line-outs, who was orchestrating the line-out movements or whatever like that. I for some reason it went wrong, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what Victor thinks, but I don't know whether there was any discernible reason for it or not. I'm still scratching my head on that one.
Oh, okay, Victor.
Yeah, I think we all knew going into this World Cup. I think I said it last time we were on the show, is that we were always going to learn a lot, even through heartbreak. We're going to learn a lot with this World Cup. And when Paul O'Connell joined this coaching team, he made an immediate impact, and that immediate impact was tidying up the line-out defence. But as Brent says, prior to this World Cup, in the warm-up games, the line-out was a problem. In the English game before the World, I think in the English game and in I can't remember the other game we played. Was it Italy? In the warm-up, it seems so long ago. The line-out was a problem, and that was highlighted. And when you unearth issues, or when a team unearths issues, you just can't turn a blind eye to them. And we didn't improve our line-out. All of a sudden, every team we played against went heavily on attacking our line out, and it became a problem. And when you have a quarterfinal or a end of pool game, or as the pressure intensifies in games, your weak links pop, be it a player, be it a set piece, whatever it is, and the line out popped. If you want to look at the scrums, then I'm not convinced. Obviously, the loss of Keane Healy as a backup was a huge loss. At the time, you think, okay, Keane Healy's gone, not so bad. We got Porter, but for Porter to play the amount of minutes he played, I'm not convinced Ty Furlong was at his best in this World Cup. If you compare him to maybe a year or two ago, and this isn't being harsh on players, but we have to genuinely review this World Cup, and we got to be critical of how we improve in World Cups going forward. So I don't know if we were at our best compared to where we are, and as Ford's coach, Paul O'Connell has to, review or answer these questions. I'm not saying the guy should get fired or anything like that, but there are questions to be answered in a professional game, like in any other job. So I would say there's a certain amount of spotlight that goes on him, as it should go on all the coaches.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Claire.
Yes.
The set piece issues.
Yeah, well, our lineouts were talking yeah. But also, and I think Dara Weston, I'm robbing your point here. Dara Weston has just commented there was no policing of the gap in the lineouts in the New Zealand and South African matches for us. Now,
No,
I did think that was an issue. There was not. Now, it was later on in this tournament, it was policed, but for air games, it didn't seem to be. And when they're coming across, and it's not being called, obviously our lineouts are going to look bad. So our set pieces, if you don't win your set pieces, you're not going to win your games.
Yeah, true. Okay, I think we'll probably just leave Hugo. It's just there's too much hassle there with him. Okay, so the second question came in from our colleague Richard Holland. Victor, I'll go to you on this first. The TMO bunker, did it work, or was it just a hand washing exercise by the referee?
I thought it was a pain in the ass, to be honest. You know, I thought it was a good idea at the start, but I think David Campese, I just saw it today, David Campese on social media blasting the referees, saying that they should be seen, not heard, and people go to matches, they pay good money to see players play and not see referees. And I think at the tail end of this final, or these World Cup finals, I saw, you know, Wayne Barnes became the villain, the hero, whatever it might be, with, you know, 4 or 5 wonderful teams playing out the quarters, the semis, and it came down to this kind of offsetting the responsibility to make a decision. You know, like what it always be is if you put a slow motion replay on a hit that under normal optics or the eye vision would look okay, and we play on and we forget about it, you're always going to make it look bad. And it's just, you know, and the World Cup final, I thought all of us knew going into the World Cup final, if there's a red card, a yellow card, potentially a red card, it's game over. And for all of the, you know, the weight of this particularly long World Cup, they just could have. I'm not saying, you know, it was a red card under circumstances, but you know, some people, some referees, some TMOs, some bunkers, they can make a name for themselves by making a decision, and I just don't like that part. I'd rather just let some stuff go, you know. But of course, that isn't, you know, there's the protection of player welfare, and I get all that as well. But you know, you could, if you pinpoint something and diagnose it under the microscope, it can look bad, and sometimes it isn't that bad in the normal state of play.
Right. Now, on that particular point, gentlemen, Brent, Claire, Victor, I'm going to read what Steve Hansen came out with. Now, you might have seen this, right? Now, what Steve Hansen said was, Wayne Barnes is not the problem. The problem is the way in which we are controlling the game. It's refereed in replay. For me, it's time to sack the TMO, get rid of it out of our game. Other than when deciding on tries, gone are the days when the referee has control. Brent Pope, would you agree with Steve Hansen on that?
I would to a certain degree, but I'd more agree with what Victor said. I think he summed it up perfectly, actually. I think the fact is the TMO and the bunker had too much power in this World Cup, and Victor's right. It didn't seem to worry us in the early games because we're getting used to it. In the later games, when it meant the winning of, or losing of a match, the referees suddenly become obsolete. And you had these people sitting up in the bunker who had time on their hands to go back over 3 or 4 plays, like even the final, to bring you back to, I think, 4 or 5 phases before for a mistake that in previous decisions would have just been let the game flow. And it became that they were I'm not saying they were trying to make a name for themselves, but there were people up there that weren't allowing the game to flow. They were ruling things to the letter of the law. Rugby's never been about that, and I appreciate why they set it up in the first place, was to look at injury player protection, all that, and I get it. So the TMO can be used for that. I just don't see it, and say for tries, if the legitimate grounding or whatever like that, when the referee can't see it. But we've got to allow the referees to get on with the game. We've got to allow the referees to make decisions on the hoof in a game-based situation, not going back for 10 or 15 replays to make a decision there and then. I think most rugby players would swallow it because it got to a situation. How's this for a rugby final? When a referee turns around and admits that he's made a mistake to Artie Savia, why couldn't they have restarted with a scrum? You know, why did he have to go ahead? He said, I've made the decision now, and okay. Otherwise, what was the TMO? What was it for? If it wasn't for saying to him, look, you've made a mistake, go back, have a reset of the scrum, give the All Blacks the ball. I'm not just talking about that was the change in the game. It wasn't. But I'm just thinking that they're ruining the game. Going to the TMO all the time is just ruining the flow of the game. And Victor is right. You know, the people up there looking at these little intricacies and saying, look, you've got to go back 4 phases to a tackle Owen Farrell made on someone that we've forgotten about. You know, unless it was dangerous, unless it was blatantly dangerous and blatantly high and yellow card or red card, then just let the game go, because otherwise it'll become...
fairness, Brent, if you're going back to an Owen Farrell tackle, it probably was fucking higher.
I just mean that.
Intent.
I thought
if it had intent, you know?
But I thought they could only go back a certain amount of phases. I thought they could only go back a certain amount of phases. That was in the rule, but it became overruled in the final.
Well, they were coming in
I-
every
I-
5 minutes.
Yeah.
In the games.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes going back to
I mean-
check on something. No.
Victor,
I
Victor,
bet you everyone in this, everyone on this screen here can actually put in their heads the picture of the TMO for that World Cup final.
Yeah.
More than probably the players. And I don't know his name, but I can see him here making the decision that
Yeah.
ruined our night on Saturday night
Yeah.
in a World Cup final, you know. And again, it goes back to we need to learn. We need to move and learn and adapt. And, I'm not a fan of Wayne Barnes. I think he brings too much anxiety to the game from both sides, because both sides end up going, if they lose, we blame Wayne Barnes. But this hesitancy, as Brent says, that Arlie Surveya issue, for example, why didn't they go back to that? An apology suddenly washed over that, whereas we went back 4 or 5 phases to see Sam Cane without intent, but it happened to hit high. But it looked bad, of course, it looked bad, and we all took the job of player welfare. But unless there's a punch to the head or a knee to the head or real intent, it shouldn't be a red card.
or
because
a
it's game
shoulder
over,
to the
you know?
head, or
Well,
a shoulder to the head. Victor.
The heat of battle.
It was a shoulder. Yeah,
it was a shoulder net, but I can tell you this much: there's no chance. I mean, obviously, Brent Popey being from New Zealand, there's no chance that Sam Cane, the captain of the All Blacks, would ever put himself in risk of getting sent off in a World Cup final. I'm sure
And
it's devastating.
the first man ever to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's inches. We're talking inches.
And then Khaleesi could have followed. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
one of
very easy.
One of the most inspirational captains out there, and a proper gentleman. Like he could have followed. So he could have had 2 red cards from 2 captains. Like, go figure. But Victor's right. They're looking for things all the time. They're looking for things, and they're looking to magnify. Now, I'm all for players. If it's a red card, it's a red card. If it's a yellow card, it's a yellow card. And I'm all for that. And I think it was a good idea to take some of the pressure off the referee and allow the bunker to make the decision over the time 10 minutes. That was a good idea in principle, because it started out in Australia and New Zealand, but it just got overhanded. They had to. It's the stop-start. It's like watching a game of cricket where every ball that is bowled, they come back and say, was he in front of the wickets? Is an LBW? Is it not? It slows the game down.
Well, okay. All right, fair enough. So let me ask you then, Brent, Victor, Claire. Are World Rugby as they are, right? Are they fit for purpose with the mistakes they've made, with the draw in 2020, 3 years before the World Cup, prior to the World Cup, the Johnny Sexton debacle and the delay and what his thing was, the Tom Curry Bongi incident. They just Bill Beaumont and for me personally,
Bill Beaumont should not be there. Bill Beaumont should not be head of World Rugby.
I think they are antiquated and they are not fit for purpose. What do you guys think, Victor, Brent?
I totally agree with you. That's the way it is. Rugby's old school, traditional.
It's an old boys club.
It's an old boys club. That was quite obvious when Bill Beaumont got reselected or selected instead of Pichot from Argentina, which would be a younger generation. I think the draw, there was massive mistakes in this World Cup, huge mistakes. Not only the Tom Curry Bongi incident, but the Tom Curry red card. If you're talking about red cards at the start against Argentina, I thought it was pathetic, particularly when the same happened in other games and weren't red cards. Back to that TMO bunker situation. So I think, again, from a World Rugby point of view, they got to review the mistakes. Obviously, the show went on, even losing, nothing to do with rugby, but losing the French losing, the Irish losing. The show went on. It was a fantastic spectacle, and a full house in Paris. So from a point of view, from media, it was a success. But World Rugby needs to learn from those mistakes that you highlighted, Peter. Absolutely. And I think getting rid of the old guard would be the start of it. I don't understand why these guys hang on. I mean, he must be in his 70s now, Bill Beaumont. I'm not being ageist or anything, but the
No,
game
I
has
know.
to evolve. But there's there's also a new crowd. I mean, there's a huge new crowd of both Irish followers and I'm sure New Zealand and South African followers that need to be accommodated in this new generation we're in, and they don't give a damn about the likes of Bill Bowman and back in the 70s playing. They want to see the new generation and the kind of benefits that go with that. And not have a situation where the old guard are making decisions from back in the 1950s. So I agree with that. We need to evolve as a global sport.
No, I think Victor's right. This is a global sport now, that should go with the times, and the times are younger people as administrators because they know what the game needs. And I just think they got it wrong on a number of issues for this World Cup. The French didn't get it wrong, as Victor said. I mean, I was over at 3 or 4 of the games. They did a fantastic job. I mean, it was only there was a bit of a pinprick in the balloon socially when Ireland and France went out because you wanted one of those 2 teams to make the final just to keep the kind of fervor going. But I mean, they did a fantastic job. Where else in the world, apart from maybe New Zealand, would they get full houses at so-called minnow games? They were packed out. The French really got into it. So that was a success. What wasn't a success was they got caught rotten with the draw. They should have known not to make a draw 4 years out, but they should have known that teams can change rankings overnight, let alone in a 4-year period. So a team like Japan that have been so combative and so good at the World Cup at home suddenly had a ranking of 3 or 4 after that World Cup, and that went into the whole ranking side of the lopsided draw. But as Victor said before about the lineouts, you've got to learn, and in Australia those mistakes won't be made, and that's thankful. But even on clarification of incidents, there was nothing. The World Rugby didn't come out with anything after the refereeing. It was let to air out, the same as the Bongi incident. It was let to air out on social media. They had all these people after the matches going on, and we very much made Barnes the victim when he shouldn't have been. He was only doing what that he knows, and he's an experienced referee.
But Brent, I mean, for a referee to be getting death threats, that's disgraceful.
Well, that should not happen.
It's wrong.
That should not happen.
It's wrong because I mean we go back to the days, as Victor so aptly put it. We go back to the days when teams just sucked it up. They just said, okay, the decision didn't go our way, and that's part of rugby. It's always been part of rugby. If we don't have referees, we can't have a game. We don't want to get so robotic in the game that we have mechanical referees or something going on. They get it spot on every time. They don't, and that's the human nature of refereeing. It's the human nature of playing. Not all players play the game mistake free. And that's the way it's got to have always been. I think Barnes was hung out to dry. Actually, I think that he was made to be the victim. He got death threats. He was all over social media, and that for what? Doing his job. Sure, he might have made a mistake on both sides. Even South Africa, New Zealand. I'm not coming at this as a one-eyed supporter. He made mistakes for other teams. Maybe the England are looking and saying if he didn't give that penalty in the last minute, they'd have been in the final. But that's what refereeing's about. It's
Brent,
human.
Brent, let me ask you. Are we ever going to see a time where a rugby referee with all this bunker TMO
doesn't make a mistake
going on? Are we ever going to see a referee issue a straight red card again?
No, because they don't have to.
Because why should he? Because now they're putting something into place where he can deflect that responsibility to somebody else for 10 minutes and get on with the game. That's what it was designed for. But I take that. But I mean, we're not, because that's what the bunker's there for. It's for player safety, welfare. It shouldn't be there for every little keyhole decision during a game. We don't mind going upstairs. If there's a late tackle or there's a high tackle or there's a dangerous tackle, I don't mind that going to the bunker. I don't mind that them making a decision because they have a closer look at it. What I mind is going back 4 or 5 phases to get a knock on. Was it a knock on? Wasn't it a knock on? Because referees are going to be unable in the future. Who will want to referee? Because I say, okay, we're not going to get it right all the time, and we're going to be blamed if we don't. Because you've got to have some leniency to the referee and say, okay, they're human. Now, given his own protection, Barnes was completely honest when he said to Adi Savia, I made a mistake. He was completely honest, but his hands were tied. His hands were tied. Why couldn't he have been given the jurisdiction to say, I made a mistake and let's reset with a scrum as if the ball had hit the camera up above or something, or if the ball had hit a player, go back that. No,
why didn't that happen? Why didn't?
Because once the referee's made a decision, he's made the decision. But we've all grown up with that. I don't want rugby to become robotic, so the referee doesn't have a part to play, and the referee is only human, and we need referees for every game from grassroots to international. We just need them in the game. So, let's take a bit of the heat off the referees, please.
All right. No, fair enough. Okay. All right. Good point, Brent. Sorry, go on, Claire.
Talking about World Rugby, Darrell Weston has a comment there. World Rugby could be described with the phrase Will Carroll used for the RFU, 57 old farts and blazers. Some of those World Rugby committee members were paying when wingers used to throw in at the line out.
Yeah, true.
And just, I'm probably coming off it, but that's World Rugby, and now they have this new doofangled World League Rugby Union, whatever thing it is. Like they're trying to grow rugby, and now they're throwing this into the works.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, Victor, are we ever going to see a referee give a straight red card again?
I will hope so, because as Brett was saying there, and this kind of hate mail stuff, we had a saying back in the 90s, and it covered not only rugby, but it covered nightclubs, day-to-day stuff, everything. And that saying was, the ref didn't see it. And that meant if the ref didn't see it, it didn't happen. Now, we're in a situation now where it goes to a TMO, goes to a bunker, and I think that festers and creates the hatred for referees because it just elongates a process. Whereas, as human nature is, if there's a shoulder to a face or a potential, once it's not an outstanding incident, if the ref plays on, we're good with that in human nature. We're good with it. He didn't see it, keep going, get on with the next phase, and tough shit, basically, right? Whereas now there's 40 cameras. Yeah. Sorry.
Do we think social media? Do we think armchair refs? Social media. Yeah. Do we think social media have a part to play? Not saying like 15, 20 years ago, you hadn't got people on the phone that probably have never been on a rugby pitch in their life, have never think, and I can do this, I can do that. Do we believe that social media has a part to play in it?
Social media and all the video links, the 10 screens, the 50 video cameras that show different angles. Whereas people get an opinion, they start thinking, the TMOs, the bunkers. Whereas the ref made a decision, we all respect that. And we're losing that in rugby. So we need to go back there. I'm not saying that, the referee should be all-encompassing with the decision maker, because that maybe not be fair in them with the technology they have these days. But, the longer these decisions take to be made, the more hatred and the more viewing and the more opinions that land upon it. And that creates the anger and so on, But as I said, if you go back to the 90s, the ref didn't see it, it didn't happen. That's the way we lived our lives.
The problem, Victor, as I see it, is unfortunately, with social media and all the angles and all that, the referees are in a difficult position because damned if they do, damned if they don't. If you get a situation, we ever said, will a referee give a red card again? Yes, we could say that. But what if he doesn't give a red card? And what if a player is seriously injured and comes back? Then you've got all the legal connotations. Does a player sue somebody for not giving a red card to a player that dangerously tackles? He missed it. So we've got to have an outlet. But that's what I thought the bunker was for. I thought the bunker would allow the referee to say, hey, something has gone on here. I can't get a close enough look. Was it dangerous? Was there mitigation? All those things. So let's put that out to the bunker. And that I approved of, because that could give somebody, even a doctor sitting there could say, okay, this guy needs to come off the pitch or whatever like that. The referee has missed it. So that was all good. What I have a problem, I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is when that it's thrown up to every decision on the field, coming from scrums to knock-ons to not back,
Yeah.
5 phases. That's what I have a problem with, because I think the danger in referees being given back the permission for red cards is that it all comes down to their opinion in real time as to what has happened or not happened. And I'm not so concerned about the giving of the red card. I think that would be a responsible thing to do. I'm more concerned about when they miss a red card.
Right, hold on, Brent. Brent, I want to ask now. This popped up, and I really want to ask your opinion, Claire's opinion, and Victor, your opinion. Antoine Dupont criticised the referee after the qualifying or the semi-final, whatever it was.
Quarterfinal.
And he said and he said it wasn't up to the standard of the game that was being played. Now, that doesn't help the cause for the officiating people.
What game was he talking about? The game they lost.
The game
they lost, yeah.
Yeah, the game they lost, yeah. No, but I mean, like, it wasn't, and in fairness, Brent, it wasn't a great game for the officials, to be honest with you. And Dupont, he came out and he said it. So I don't know. I mean,
Peter,
but
we can't keep bagging the referees all
Peter,
the time.
Yes. What? Who's calling me? What? Yes.
It's Hugo. I can see you. Sorry, guys. I can see you and hear you clearly now.
Jesus
welcome
Christ, Hugo McNeil. Oh my God, the heavens have opened. He has joined us. Hugo McNeil, how the hell are you? Are you well?
I've heard the last 15 minutes, so I've really enjoyed it.
Okay. I just have I have a point to make. And I told my son when he started playing rugby, and still to this day I say the ref is right even when he's wrong, because he's the one calling the shots. And that's it. At the end, he is the one calling the shots, and he is the one we can sit and give out and talk about on social media and call them out. But until you're actually in that position and do, what was that? Is that your food's at the door?
No, it's nothing to do with me.
Okay, and until you're actually there and in it, we can all sit and complain and give out, but they are the refs, and they are the ones with the decision at the end of the day.
Okay, Hugo.
That's just my 6 cents worth.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Hugo, the officiating of the World Cup just gone. What did you make of it? What did you think of it?
I would agree with the panel. I mean, look, I think this kind of uneven stuff, I think generally was pretty good, but now it's more dissected than ever. And I completely agree with the point that Claire made. If you start going down the road of criticizing officials, where does it stop? And you can't. And I think Antoine Dupont was completely wrong. Whatever he felt, however disappointed that he felt after that, he had a responsibility as the captain of France, of the host nation. In speaking out, and so I think generally they did a good, a decent job, but obviously now there's much more subject to scrutiny because of the TMO and other factors.
Right, but and okay, so and we touched on the bunker ref, and if you heard our conversation with Brent and Victor and Claire. That are we? The question I asked was: are we ever going to see a referee give a straight red card again?
Yeah, I think you will, because there will be some that will be just absolutely blatant and absolutely clear. But I mean, I don't have a sort of a problem if you get to the. I agree. Sometimes they just take way too long, and it needs to be sort of cut down. But the basic principle is, if you're helping to come to the right decision, and we all got frustrated over the years when our teams are beaten on wrong decisions, and if you can eradicate that's fine, but there has to be speeded up, and there has to be sort of conscious on the impact of the rest of the game. I mean, the game, and the guys have probably commented on it earlier, I mean, the amount of ball, the time the game is in play, mid-20s, high 20 minutes of the game is kind of crazy, and you need to be able to deal with that.
All right, okay. It's funny. Now we move on from this. I just want to. Come on, Brett. I just want to talk about Ireland's our performance. Sorry, Brent, I'm not including you on this, although you are an adoptive Irishman. But I'm talking about Ireland's performance in the World Cup. Brent, yeah, I'll go to you first. What did you think of it?
I thought Ireland were brilliant. Really, I mean, all teams prove that, and I'm just saying it. But I followed the Irish rugby. I think not only were they brilliant, they were brilliant in New Zealand. They were brilliant in the Six Nations. I think Andy Farrell got everything right. They just like England and like France and like New Zealand. Just on the day, it just came a bit unstuck. Now we can look at multiple reasons for that, but they were certainly well prepared. They certainly had. They were in real good health, physically, apart from a couple of injuries, and those players were coming back. So I think that if you take the game on the context of just one match, and that's all it was, it's the same as saying in New Zealand. You think all the team. You think what could have happened over the last couple of weeks? Ireland could have just as easily won that match. Yes, I know they didn't. But England could have just as easily beaten South Africa. So it could have been England in the final. France could have just as easily beaten South Africa too. So it's all these things. It just comes down to the way. I think South Africa showed amazing resilience in those matches. To win 3 matches by a point says something about their character. I think New Zealand got it right on the day against Ireland, and Joe Schmidt had something to do with that because they managed to shut down Ireland's back row just about completely, which no other team had done in the last 18 months. I think Victor will agree that we did get things, when I say we, the Irish did get things a bit wrong in the sense of they panicked a bit early in that game. They also had problems with their line out in the scrum, what we've talked about. But I just think they were they didn't get off to a good start, and they were always chasing the game on that particular game. And I think you had players that played the best game for New Zealand, Smith, Ardie, Geordie Barrett. So I don't think there's anything wrong with Irish rugby. I just think, like a lot of teams, they just didn't produce it on the night, and they'd be disappointed about that because, to get to a quarterfinal, we all wanted them to move on from that quarterfinal. They were just beaten by the better team on that particular night. So no problem areas as far as I can see. You fix the fixables, which are the scrum and the line out to a degree before next year's Six Nations, and you develop a few players. Johnny Six and Crowley will come in, but Ireland's in a pretty good place.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Brent. Hugo, Ireland's performance. Go on.
I completely agree with Brent. I think he's hit the key points. I think Ireland have done very well. They played very well. Through the games, which there was, if certain things had just gone the other way, we would have been talking about something very different now. But again, I think they did they played really well. I think I completely agree with Brent about them closing down the Irish back row and attack from there. I think the one thing we'll want to look forward to is taking our back, taking our back play game on a bit more. Threatening, and more from various phases. And I think that at the end of the game, when we had a lot of the ball, sometimes it can be easier for the defender than it can be the attacker because we didn't look like we were going to really, break them down. And there wasn't the kind of maybe the variation that you might have liked. And had there been, maybe we would have stretched New Zealand and had scored a try, but we didn't, and that's obviously frustrating and disappointing. At the end of that game. But I think in general,
Hugo, we had. Sorry to interrupt you. We had 37 phases.
Yeah,
something like that against the All Blacks, and didn't score. That's not good enough.
No, that's what I say. That in terms of the attacking game, it probably the sort of in the last couple of years, the back row game, the line out driving mode, sometimes off quick ruck ball we've scored, but the kind of consistently of the back line operating and being able to unpick other defenses is something that needs to be advanced, because we're saying the same things. I agree. If you're 37 phases at the end of a game when presumably the other side are on the ropes as well, and you don't score, there's something a bit wrong with that.
And how do you fix that? Is that a coach?
I think that the backline game has come on a lot in the last couple of years, and I just think it needs to continue to develop to be able to threaten as a unit off first phase and also off second phase. And I think there's more potential in this backline than we've seen so far, which I think is exciting. But I think that was the problem. 37 phases, and didn't really look like scoring a try.
No, but I think in general, Victor, I'm coming to you next. But I think in general, Hugo, excuse me. I think in general our phase play is good. Was good. But just whatever, that just knocked us for six. I just couldn't believe it looking at it. The 37 phases against the All Blacks, and not like we were knocking on the door and they just knocked us back. It was excruciating to watch, to be honest with you. Victor, your thoughts on this?
I'm a little bit more harsh. I agree
Go
with
on.
what the lads is. I agree with what the lads are saying, because at the end of the day, we were very close to getting to a final, getting to a semi-final, and succeeding. But we weren't World Cup savvy, and I don't think we were World Cup cycle savvy. So if you look back the last 4 years, if you take France, for example, they completely obliterated their team 4 years ago, started with a young team, and then build towards the World Cup. All we want to do as a nation is win the next game, be it November internationals, Six Nations, tours in the summertime. We need to win. We need to win. We need to get victories. We're not ready to kind of lose a game or throw a championship or throw a November series for the betterment in a World Cup cycle. And until we can do that, we're not going to improve as a team. We're not going to blood players the way we should be blooding for a World Cup. Now, maybe the World Cup isn't in the RFU's sights as a cash cow. Maybe the Six Nations is all important, and so be it. But to compete in the World Cup, we need to build. So that's the World Cup cycle. When it comes to World Cup savvy, you cannot say that Ireland were World Cup savvy this year. We had the same team more or less for any amount of games, right? So, if you go back to the first, obviously the Johnny Sexton situation with the abuse and the referees, he had to be picked. So the whole team and squad was focused about one man being picked against Romania when he was allowed to be picked. When he was picked, then he decided, it was in the paper after the Romanian game, Johnny Sexton's playing against Tonga. Then we all had to play against Tonga. And then we all had to play against Scotland, because Scotland were a massive threat. So if you're going to put players through that amount of minutes, you're going to struggle in the championship games, which are the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and potentially the final. And that's where I don't think we were World Cup savvy. We were brave, and our supporters are fantastic, but I just don't think we were World Cup savvy. And I think we'll learn from this World Cup, just like South Africa. Next time we could do it better. If you look at what Ian Foster said about us, he said we were predictable but effective. So you go back to those 37 phases.
Ian Foster, yeah.
I know, but this is a guy who beat us, and they did a lot of homework on us. He said predictable but effective. So the wraparound, the tackles they made, were we ever in threat of breaking that line? Were we in the last 37? Yes, of course. In the situation, Ronan Keller could have turned the ball over and scored a try. But,
he could have, yeah. But I mean, Victor, 37 phases.
Yeah, well, the New Zealanders
37 fucking phases. Come on.
They'd argue it was 37 phases they defended. So I'm not being Debbie Downer here. I'm just saying that I think we could be more World Cup savvy, and even at that, playing more or less the same team for that amount of games, we still could have gone into a semi-final. But bear in mind and be advised that the semi-finals were up another stage. So would we have lasted at that pace? That's another question.
I think they would have, Victor. I agree with your first point. I'm struggling to agree with your second point. I agree entirely about the World Cup cycle thing, because I think that's just been part of your psychology. And because you were void of so many Six Nations back in the day when it was all about the Grand Slam, I think Irish rugby had moved on to that stage where they wanted a series win in New Zealand. They wanted performances against Australia and these teams they hadn't beaten before. I mean, remember, we're only going back to 2016, the first time the All Blacks.
That's the
I take it from now on, yes, there's got to be development. But I think actually Andy Farrell probably got it pretty right. I mean, you could say the same about South Africa. They played the same pack through all those games. So Erasmus stuck to his guns and said, look, I'm going to run out Etzebeth every game. I'm going to run out with the front row every game. Yes, he had more strength and depth. I think that was the problem that Ireland had. And you talked about it before. Yes, Andrew Porter shouldn't have had to play so much rugby, but it was because that we didn't really have the trust in the 23 that could come on, even in the last game, minutes against the All Blacks. I thought actually Crowley should have come in because Johnny had been so brave, but he was out on his feet. We could all see that in the game. So you needed to bring somebody on for the last 10 minutes that could open that game up. But I don't see it I don't think that Andy Farrell got anything wrong. I don't think he played the guys, overplayed them actually. I don't, because
Brent, sorry to interrupt. Brent, would you have taken Sexton off after 60 minutes?
No, I would take it off after 70 minutes. When Ireland were chasing, when Ireland needed a try, when Ireland needed 4 points or more, I would have taken them off. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Claire Devaney.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no,
Yes,
just what Victor. I remember you the last time you were on speaking about that, and when you first said that, I was kind of going, "What's he on about?" Because I was watching this World Cup, I was like, "That's what Victor's talking about." It's that we don't go for the long term. It's short term goals. It's short term goals. We do this, we do that. We don't see 3 or 4 steps ahead. We're not like chess players. We're like draft players.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing, Claire, is here's a question for you, right? You know, when Faf de Klerk, when we beat South Africa, Faf de Klerk was interviewed afterwards, and it was water off a duck's back, right? So his words were, "Yeah, we made a few mistakes. We'll improve. We'll learn from this and move on." Now, if we lost to South Africa that day, would we be heartbroken? Would we be disappointed, decimated? What would we be? You know, so. That's where, and Brent's right, maybe it's me from back in the Six Nations days of wanting to win, but we need to be able to take a loss. New Zealand lost to France, South Africa lost to us. You can be guaranteed they weren't concerned about that going into the final. They forgot about it.
Air Force loss was in a knockout game.
Yeah, and when
whereas their first loss wasn't.
And they move on. They move on, but they move on. They're ready to take a loss and get better. We seem to have this urge that we have to win because our confidence, we have to have Johnny Sexton with us. We need a team around him, and we have to win this game to move on and have confidence, even though physically we're draining ourselves. So when Popey says there, he says, I would have taken Sexton off. I agree, but Andy Farrell wasn't going to take Sexton off at any stage.
He should have, and I appreciate that, Victor, too. But I mean, when you're going into games, the unfortunate thing for Ireland, let's go back to the draw again, because all the games were must-win games, and that was the problem from the get-go, that they were in the group of death, and you know, if they were to lose to South Africa, hey, they were playing France, and everybody wanted to avoid France. I didn't at the time. I thought that New Zealand would be waiting for Ireland, but that was the reward. So in a sense, a bit like the referees, Andy Farrell was kind of damned if he did or damned if he didn't. And the same argument could be said to Gauthier about playing Dupont. All the French come up, blew up on social media and said, why were you playing him? Why were you playing him? He didn't need to play. And he said, well, look, he said, you'd be saying the same if I didn't play him and he didn't perform in the semi-finals or quarterfinals. You'd be saying Antoine needed more game time. So I think it's moving forward now. And I said, Victor makes a good point about being more savvy in between cycles and not to go after the Six Nations so readily or whatever. Now, the championship, whole new revamping the championship may change that because you might have something to play for every 2 years. But I do absolutely think it's a time to develop these young players for the next cycle and start looking at what players are going to be around at the next World Cup, what players are going to be of an age relevant to the next World Cup to bring the energy, and start moving those players through the conveyor belt a bit quicker.
Right. So should we, as Irish rugby fans, give a flying fuck if we win the next 3 Six Nations, Grand Slam, but just aim for the World Cup? Is that
France done it?
Is that what we're saying? Or whatever it is?
Well, France done it and it blew up in their face.
We need to suffer a bit. We don't need to. We
I agree. I agree, Victor. I agree. I totally agree.
And here's why. 2 years ago, 4 years ago, we should have prepared for Johnny Sexton. I mean, the great player, fantastic servant to rugby. Heartbreaking to see him go out the way he did. but we should have had a backup plan. And as Brent said earlier, if we had a backup plan and if Crowley was up to speed, he would have been substituted 60, 70 minutes. But we couldn't make the change because Crowley wasn't tested at that level. So we didn't prepare out, and it was obvious. And we were damn lucky. That Sexton made it and could have made it into other games. But that's probably his professionalism and nothing to do with us. So that's where we need to prepare. But yeah, it's not the end of the world if we go into Six Nations next year with a whole new, not a whole new, but enough new blood into that team and lose again against England or France. So what?
Yeah.
We move on. The Aviva will still be full. The supporters will still follow, So, and then we build into the tour next year, and then so on to the next World Cup.
Yeah, great. Okay, Brent.
Right.
Would you agree that we
No,
just have to just get over this thing
because
we have to win every game?
Look, you spend 100 odd years getting certain monkeys off the back. One of them was the New Zealand, one of them was beating South Africa, and all these teams. You've got all those monkeys off the back. So I'm in complete agreement with Victor. The only unfortunate thing is what we probably can predict what's going to happen next year's Six Nations. It's going to be a 2-horse race again between France and Ireland. And I mean, that gives some interest into it, but the other teams have got to go completely, whatever about Ireland. England are going to have to go through a whole rebuilding process, as are Wales, probably not so much Scotland, but for the next couple of years, you can see that Ireland are going to dominate that competition. They're either going to be first or second, you would predict. So I think it's about looking to the next World Cup and saying, okay, how do we get at least to a quarterfinal, out of a quarterfinal or a semi-final or final, and we do this by blooding more younger players through the next cycle so that they're ready, so they've got 20 or 30 internationals by that time, and we're ready to have a really good shot at it. Because that remains the one thing that Irish rugby want desperately, is to get to a final or to win a World Cup, and it's probably what they deserve over the last couple of cycles, but they haven't got there. So we need to change our thinking, and we need to, as Victor said, we need to learn from this World Cup, and we need to learn that we've got to bring those players through a bit earlier.
All right. Okay. Fair enough.
Claire,
also, would you? Sorry, go on, Victor. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you think about it, the winning of a World Cup, we realize that this World Cup, it ain't that easy. We got to a quarter final and there was heartbreak. There was thousands, tens of thousands going to Paris every weekend. Heartbreak. There would be another 2 weeks of that heartbreak or pain or whatever, ecstasy, whatever it might be. So winning a World Cup is quite hard, right? Ask New Zealanders, ask the South Africans.
Absolutely.
So we're not there yet, and the effort, the pain to get there. If we went through that pain in the 4-year cycle, it would make it somewhat easier in the actual competition itself from a preparation point of view. And that's but again, maybe the RFU see it differently. Maybe from the accountant's point of view, the Six Nations and the November internationals are cash cows, and it makes paying the players whatever.
With the prices they're charging for tickets, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, they're still for the house,
Exactly.
There's such a conveyor belt of young players. You've only got to look at the games on the weekend. Connacht, Ulster, Munster, Leinster, they're all performing, and there's heaps of young players like McCarthy and Beard and that all to come through. I think that Andy Farrell will just sit down and say, look, what positions do we need a bit of a kind of a refill in? And there's a certain positions, obviously we know about, Hugo talked about some certain backs won't make the next World Cup. A couple of front rowers we've got to look for. But in world terms, Ireland is in a pretty good place. They don't have to rebuild from the bottom up as other. Look at South Africa, for instance. I mean, they're the greatest team in the world, and they may well be, but they're going to have a huge route out after this World Cup. They'll lose most of their pack, who were the same pack that basically won the World Cup in 2019. So they've got a lot of rebuilding to do. I mean, Ireland probably, on the better side of the ledger in that regard. Yes, people will come on and say we've got heaps of young players out there in New Zealand and South Africa and England coming through, but Ireland is in a good place in that situation because they've only got to make a few changes over the next few years, I would suggest.
But Brent, we have to make a few changes in a few key positions.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yep.
And one of the key positions is 10. Now we have
Yep.
Crowley, we Prendergast, we have
Yep.
Byrne. Who would you, if you were to, I suppose, look into your crystal ball and say, well, the successor will be or could be?
Well, I like all those three players, actually. To be honest, I do, and I think
such a diplomat.
No, but I like three players. I like Crowley. He's a confident player. I like Burns' ability to read the game, and I thought he's a bit unlucky, to be kind of usurped in the run into the World Cup. He didn't really get his opportunities. I also like watching the under-20s last year. I like Prendergast. I mean, I think he's a great.
Yeah.
He's very much in the Johnny Sexton mold. I mean, you take those three. You take those three options. What options do England have?
No idea.
What options actually do New Zealand have? I mean, they'll be losing. Richie Mo'unga's off to Japan. Damien McKenzie, right. He's the natural successor. But after him, where's the conveyor belt? And I've been arguing with New Zealand players. I said, okay, who are your natural deputy? Who are the guys you're going to introduce now? They've got to go away and rebuild themselves. But what I'm saying is that in certain positions, scrum half would worry me as a position. I think Victor's right about we've got to look at a couple of prop positions. Keane Healy will be out of the mix in a year or so. I don't know whether he'll go through to the next Six Nations or not, but we've got to look for replacements for him. I think we're pretty well served for the next World Cup in the back row. Players will come and go and come into form. I think we need to look at a couple of younger midfield backs. But other than that, we could, you could see a back row, for instance, in the next World Cup, you could see the basis of that pack. Van der Fleer could still be there. Caelan Doris is still young enough. He could be there. Yeah. Beard could be there. McCarthy,
Yeah. Claire, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm actually, as much as I'm against the supporter, Jack Crowley is very good. But we have to realise he's very young and we can't be putting he's the next Johnny Sexton. He's not the next Johnny Sexton and he's not the next Roland O'Gara. He's the new Jack Crowley. He is going to be himself, and you cannot be putting we've been lucky in the past number of years that we had Rog and that we had Sexton for many a year. So you can't be putting the weight of the Irish team on such a young person's shoulders. I do believe he's going to be great.
Oh, don't worry about that. Come to Six Nations, he'll have a lot of weight in the shoulders.
Victor Costello, the next 10 debate, Crowley, Byrne, Prendergast. What do you think?
I think I always maintained, and it didn't happen, but God forbid if it did, if Sexton had got injured in the last year or two, that one of our out halves will step up, because it's very hard to be in someone like his shadow, like the likes of Crowley was, Ross Byrne, and Prendergast, obviously very young. He's very young, but I think that we're in good shape. Ross Byrne, I'm a particular fan of. I thought he got a really hard time, particularly around the 2009 World Cup when he played against England. It was. He went out in Twickenham and it was a disaster of a game for everyone. But it didn't help when their hooker threw 7 lineouts throws to the English, So as an out half, he really struggled, and he was the victim of that game. And on the back of that, they brought Joey Carby to the World Cup, and Ross had to struggle on. So I think Ross has got a hard time, but a fantastic finisher. So you'd have to look at Crowley. I mean, I put it this way, right? If you go back a bit, 60, 70 minutes into that New Zealand game, we had Crowley on the bench and they didn't put him on. If Ross was on the bench, would they put him on? So that's a valid question. So I don't think Ireland will start Crowley or start Ross. They'll start Crowley with a view to him growing, but we all know what Ross can do. So between a lot of them, I think we've a lot of riches there. I think Prendergast will eventually come through. I think Crowley's probably tipped to be the number one to get through. But as a backup, we've got Ross Byrne, who's a fantastic finisher, a guy who's going to score you points, and a guy you take on as a sub. maybe not start, but definitely take on as a sub, and has served his country and province extremely well. So I think, ironically, I think we're in really good shape at 10.
Yeah, and you've got players like Jimmy O'Brien and Calvin Nash, and these players that are really coming through, and still young men. Mac Hansen's still young. Again, there's a couple of good midfield backs coming through the system as well. You know, the under-20s had such a great run last year with their back row. So yeah, and provincial rugby is doing really well. I mean, they regularly beat teams from France and Wales and England and South Africa. So there's a lot to be happy about the Irish rugby. It's just unfortunately we're just still in the wake of the World Cup, because that's what's emotional to us.
Peter,
and
just
to follow on from Ben's,
Peter, time check.
Yeah,
I
see time we're at an hour, but there was one thing I just wanted to end on, gentlemen. We're at the hour mark, and we'll finish on this. Claire, I'll ask you first. David Humphreys, good appointment for a replacement for Nusafora?
Can I be the fifth on that one?
Yes, no?
Just
You can plead the fifth on that one, yes. Okay, fair enough.
Be the fifth on that one.
Okay, no, fair enough. All right, fair enough. Brent Pope, David Humphreys, is he the man for the job?
Well, first of all, I for the departing Nusafora, I thought he did a fantastic job. I really did. He put a lot of work behind the scenes, and fitness levels and bringing all the structures forward and that. So he's to be congratulated. Yes, I think, David Humphreys has gone off. Not only was he a great player, he was a good team man. He's gone off and done great work on the kind of admin side. I thought somebody like Joe Schmidt was looking at that job, or they put it out to a number of.
So did I. I thought he was.
And there was even talk of the South African coach, wasn't there? What do you think about Felix Jones' appointment as the assistant coach of England? Fair play to him. He's done well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he has. Victor, we'll end it on this. Last word to you. David Humphreys' appointment as performance director.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think Humps was always a real student of the game, and he was well qualified outside of rugby. He won the European Cup, I think, in 1999 with Ulster, and then went on to obviously represent Ireland, but also went and learned his trade as a coach with Ulster, and then obviously over in the UK. So I think he's really will be really good. And if you go back to our original Bill Bowman question, I think Humps is the antithesis of that. I think he's a guy who'll bring new blood, new generation into the country, and will be very good for the provinces as well as the Irish team. So I think it's a great appointment. I didn't know he was up for the job, but seeing him get that, I think it'd be great for the country.
You're right, Victor. Well said. He's a good guy too. You get on with all the players, which is important. People respect him. That's half the job done. So no, congratulations on that job.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, all that is left for me to do.
No, hold on. We forgot to something. We have to hand the floor over to Mr. Pope.
Brent Pope.
Yes.
Sorry, Brent Pope.
Yep.
I asked Claire to remind me if I've forgotten. Brent Pope, tell us all about the elephant in the room. Go for it.
Oh, yes, quickly. No, I just came up with a concept a couple of years ago. It's no, I suppose, I've shared my life around mental health difficulties for the last 10 or 15 years, and I just wanted to do something a bit different. So I came up with an idea of that everybody has an elephant in their life. It doesn't matter whether it's issues that do with sport or bullying or racism or gender and all these things, and something that negatively affects your mental health, and you just can't get out there. We all know too many people take their own lives in Ireland, maybe 500 in excess of 500 this year alone. 75% of those are men. So as men, we need to start getting out there and talking to friends and being a bit more vulnerable. So I came up with this idea that by having an elephant in a foyer in a sports club, in an organization. It's a symbol of hope for people that suffer in silence. So somebody coming into a foyer, they see this wonderfully branded elephant painted 5 foot high, got them from the Philippines, painted by fantastic artists. And it just comes on a plaque that says, whatever business you're involved in, that they care about you and they support having normal conversations around mental health, because it's so important. We've all been touched, I'm sure, out there by somebody taking their own lives, or somebody in a situation they've gone to a dark place and whatever, and we need to address it. I'm sick of hearing people always relate things back to the physical. If you're looking well physically, you should be well mentally. That's not the way it works, and I can be testimony to that, because I was always a fit player and that I just couldn't look after my mental health. So I came with this idea. It's gone worldwide. We got one done by all the players from which I hope was going to be a World Cup winning elephant, but all in aid of the Samaritans, who do such a wonderful job. Adam Clayton did one that went out on the YouTube platform. So it's really getting traction. So I'm just appealing to any companies out there that if you want to do something for mental health, have a look at the elephant in the room. And I think it's a great idea to symbolize hope and recovery for people that are suffering, especially in the workplace. So that's about that. But the website's out there, elephantintheroom.ie, and hopefully people will come on board, because I say all the profits go to the Samaritans, and in the future, hopefully other mental health charities who do such a great job out there and are largely unfunded. So look, thanks for the platform. Good to see you, Victor, again. We must meet up for a beer.
You too, probably. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Victor likes the beers.
If you're meeting up for a beer, Victor owes me a fucking point. So
Victor owes us all points at this stage. Victor owes us all points.
That's no problem.
Victor's a superstar in what he's done in his life. I mean, you're still running the flight schools, Victor.
I am indeed, Bobby. Yeah, I am.
You know,
and he's building hangars for private jets, Brent.
well, he's gone up and
excuse anyone.
How old are the kids, Victor? I just was talking to some of the. How old are your kids now?
8 and 6.
Here.
What's up, each other?
I remember Victor's wedding well, because unfortunately on the day of
we're not getting on this guy, are we?
The way of the wedding, I lost a tooth, and
that's right, yeah.
Come on, that's
bubble gum.
And you can't sue Popey. It's gone beyond the what is it? The 6 years.
The statute of limitations.
And when I was talking to people,
we'll just go away, the fuck, Brent.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
See ya. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Jesus.